Okay, I guess I shall make a start. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. So my name is Nikki Kimball. I'm one of the educational consultants here at Just2easy, and in today's session, we're going to be having a look at coding made simple. So teaching Key Stage 2 students with Just2easy. So we are going to be looking at code-specific activities. So for today's session, it is a 45-minute session. So I'm going to try and wrap up UK time 4:15. Okay. Questions can be asked via the chat function as we go along. I have got this open up on my second screen, so please feel free to ask any questions as we go along if you need to. I will do a Q&A session at the end of the session as well. This session is being recorded and will be made available through YouTube. And also, if you are joining us from a COBIS school, we will be posting it onto our COBIS website, which we will give you details for, so you'll be able to access that. Especially important for those schools that maybe can't access YouTube for whatever reason. Now, in terms of what we're actually going to cover in today's session, we're going to have a look at, we're going to start with an introduction to J2Code. So I'm going to show you where to find it and the different little elements that you'll be able to access outside of the tools themselves. So we'll do an overview of J2Code, and I'll show you where you can find things like examples and some support documentation that you might need. Then, as I said, it is going to be a Key Stage 2 specific session. So we're going to skip straight past J2Turtle and we're going to go into visual. So I'm going to show you the drag and drop block-based coding for beginners. And its key features, sequences, loops, conditions, and that kind of thing. Then we're going to have a look at J2Code Logo, which is our text-based programming. So we're going to start with the beginnings, just creating things using logo, so commands, procedures, repeat loops. I'm going to show you the library, so ideas for projects, storytelling, coding, digital art, interactive maths. I didn't need to put that bit at the end. So storytelling with coding. And then I have just shoehorned this into my presentation at about 3:15. I suddenly had a bit of an inspiration. So I have put a slide in for peer assessment and review using our blogging tool, which is called J2Webby. So that's a great way of the kids being able to share their games and for them to review each other's games. So that's a really good element and part of the coding process. And then, as I said, I'm going to do a Q&A and a next steps. So I'm going to point in the direction of where you can find more information. Okay, so as always, a very busy session. So first up, how we can find J2Code. So from our Launchpad, once you have logged in, these are all the tools that you have available to you. And J2Code is here. It looks like this. And we can open that up. And it has certain elements to it. Okay. As I said earlier, we are going to focus on visual and logo. These are the two main tools that we use for Key Stage 2 teaching. But just be aware there are other tools within the toolkit. So we do have J2Turtle. So this is more suitable for your younger students. So starting in sort of reception or year 1, which is P1 or P2 if you're joining us from Scotland or Northern Ireland. And we've also got Microbit, which I'm not going to get into, but that is a standalone product. It doesn't plug in, unfortunately, but you can choose, and it works in a very similar fashion to visual. So have an explore when you get a chance. Other things to show you. We do have lesson plans along the top, so year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So please have a look at those if you get a chance. We do have Hive Hackers. Now, this is a whole scheme of work that was written around visual, in fact, and is a great starting point if you are brand new to the site and you are brand new to visual in particular. Click on Hive Hackers, and that has a whole library worth of activities, both for you and also teacher support documentation as well. So it's session by session, starting with the very simple stuff. You can print these out if you wanted to, but you'll also find within the library, which I'm going to show you later, there are some activities for the students to complete. And some of them are really quite good. So we've got things like, creating an animation, creating a conversation, creating looping activities or computer games. And it's a great way of the children being able to see how a game works and then to see the coding that underpins it. So there we go. So that is Hive Hackers. And again, I'll reflect back on that in a second. And we will, I'll show you the library aspect of that. But that is how you can access teacher content especially. Then I've also got the Explore example. So if I click on this, there is a folder for each of those platforms. So we've got Visual and Logo. So we can click in Visual, for example, and that is going to give us some examples. So these are the ones that we've made. As I said, there are Hive Hackers examples in the library as well. So there is really quite a robust offering that you have here. And these are a great way of the children being able to see, as I said, the code that underpins a lot of these activities. So for example, let's have a look. This is Catch a Bat. Very simple. So they can play. It's given me a sort of press space to start the hover over the bat to catch it and score a point. So I can use my space bar. And he's moving around. So if I expand that, that is showing me the coding that kind of sits below that. So that's quite intricate. Let's try and find an easier one, shall we? So some of the Year 3 examples, that's a simpler version. Let's go for Year 1 example. Okay, so this is very simple. Pen down, move forwards. So let's press play. And that's just drawing a very simple square. Okay, pen up, pen down. So this is very similar to JIT-Turtle, just transferring those skills. So there are a variety of different examples for you to have a look at, for your children to have a go at, and it's a great way of giving them some understanding and context of the kind of games or activities that they can create. So it may be worth just having this as a lesson, exploring these, opening them up and seeing how they can have a go at things. So there we go, it's a nice spirograph here, and they can then have a look at the coding. So there we go. Okay, so yeah, so those are the examples ready for you to have a go. There's also some resources, so for future learning, so that is external websites. Then you've got your shared code, so if you did share it as a teacher, you can share content, the children would find it there within the shared code, and the My Code. So if we click on that, that's going to open up into your My Files, so the pupils will be able to find any games that they've had a go at sort of creating and have saved and want to come back to. So you can see these are all my coding creations that I've made. So that is an easy way of finding our coding stuff. Okay, so that is an introduction to J2Code, but let's have a look more specifically at Visual. So J2Code Visual is a block-based coding platform, and it has 3 levels of complexity. So it's great for right across Key Stage 2. You might even, if you wanted to, if you've got some very able Key Stage 1s, I used to sort of start introducing it in Year 2. I would often introduce Scratch Junior and then transfer those skills, move them up to kind of a visual or Scratch variety of games. So it includes a huge variety of different sprites, backgrounds, and it allows for web search images, and you can add your own, so you can create your own in JIT Paint, export them as an image and import them as well. So these are 2 examples of games that we have in the library ready to go. So Easter egg hunt game and an Egyptian maze. Okay, so that will add to those examples that you've got, and these are nice challenges for the children. So I'll just show you Egyptian maze, not just because I made it, but we've got a teacher file. So the teacher file will show you the coding, so I can click on that and we'll show you the coding. It's very simple coding. Anything made by me, generally, it's quite simple coding. I'm not the world's best coder, but you can press play and it is just moving around the maze and using the up and down buttons to navigate our little pharaoh around that maze. So the children then recreate that. So that is the teacher file and the children have just a blank file. So they have sprite 1, sprite 2, and they have to program it. Okay, so that is there. There's, again, lots of things that you can set for the children for them to have a go, to build up that understanding of, sort of activities that they can create. But we're going to have a look at creating this activity here. So this is bouncing letters. This is actually pulled from the, if we've got any Northern Irish teachers out there, this is pulled from a SEA task called bouncing letters, funnily enough. And this is a nice place to start if you are introducing, movement into your coding. Movement generally is a good place to start for the youngest. So let's have a look. So it is quite simple coding. What is a little bit trickier is we've got lots of different sprites. Okay, so you could just start this with, I start it with one letter, get them to move it, and then they can transfer those skills onto subsequent letters in their name. So we've got N, I, so this is my name, surprisingly, and you can see I've got very similar coding. I've just changed some of the numbers so it doesn't bounce quite as much. So you'll see that they kind of bounce at different times, different speeds, and different distances. So that's how we get that kind of all bouncing in a different way. Because what we don't want the whole word sort of going up and down. I mean, you could set that as a challenge. So let's have a look at how I created this. So I'm just going to do it with one letter to start with. So I'm going to click a new page. Obviously, if you are creating from Visual, you would open up J2Code and click on the Visual platform there. Now, the default sprite, so that is our little character here. This is our sprite, is the penguin this time of year. At Christmas, it is a reindeer. So that's just for the period of December. I don't know why it's a penguin. I don't know why it's a reindeer. It just is. So we have one sprite. And just to kind of introduce you to the platform itself, we've got our stage here. Okay. You do have the option to add a grid onto your stage if your children find that easier. If not, switch it off. You'll notice we've got an X and Y axis, so that makes it easier for, trying to move positions, trying to code it to start in a certain area and then move to a certain area. So they can start to use their X, Y axis. So it's got great cross-curricular links with your maths curriculum. We've got our play button at the top and our stop button. We've got save as image, so you can save this as an image, and you've also got expand, so that will just move it to full screen. Okay, so that's ideal when they are playing their activity. Okay, and they can exit full screen as well. You've got your file tools along the top, so new, load, so if they've created something previously, they can load it, save. Does exactly what it says on the tin. Publish, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Examples, that is how you would access the examples that we looked at, and then the about. So that's just sort of our, I can't think of the word, licensing. I have to have a bit of a brain gap in every webinar. If you've been on my webinars before, you'll know that I lose a lot of words. It's my age. Right, so we've got our sprite. So we've got sprite 1 here. So the first thing that I tend to do is I tend to load in my background if I'm using one. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to click on my sprite 1. First of all, I just need to finish off explaining this part here before we move on to changing it. So you will load this up. I think it generally loads into level 1. Unless you've opened it before, and then it will load into whichever level it is that you will have loaded before. So it has 3 different levels. So level 1 is the easiest, and it really sort of streamlines a lot of these motion buttons and sort of subsections. So we've got less subsections, but also reduced amount of blocks within those subsections. So things like the pen, we can only set the width and the color. Text, you've got a lot less control, and sounds. So great starting point if this is brand new to you and your students. You've then also got level 2. So you can see there we start to introduce things like operators and sensing and control. And then level 3 is the full shebang. Okay, and you can see we've got a lot more options here. So we've got a lot more options in terms of pen. We can blend colors, sensing. You can start creating procedures and variables. Okay. Okay, and this is where we can drag our blocks to start coding. So let's go back to adding in our background. So to change our sprite, so at the moment this is still our sprite, we've got a little sprite here. You do have the option if you wanted to edit that sprite. So you can start colouring, you can start, filling things in if you wanted to, and you can undo that. So you can edit the sprites that are in the library. So that's quite important to point out, but we're not going to. Oh, I'm going to exit. There we go. What we're going to do is we're going to click on this little button here. So we've got our little Penguin Plus button here. Okay, so we're going to click on that, and that is going to bring up our options to add in a new sprite. So you can see here some of the sprites that I've been adding. I was having a play with trying to, I have a live lesson in a couple of weeks, so I was trying to create a recycling game. It's a work in progress, which is why you're not seeing it today. So I've got my costumes here. I have lots of different clip art libraries, so animals, dinosaurs, fairy tales, people, letters. So the letters are the ones that we're going to use, okay? But you'll notice here at the bottom we've got backgrounds. And then also we've got my pictures. So if you are working with older students or more capable students, that would be an option, is you could create your own sprites in JIT Paint on a transparent background, save those as an image, and then they will be available to use. So if any of you joined me for the for the animation webinar last night, there is my little teddy bear. So I could add that in as a sprite into J2Code. So that's nice. That's a nice feature. So they could create their own characters or their own computer game characters if you are creating computer games. So there's that, and then there's shared pictures and also web search. So it might be that we want to have an iceberg as a background. So you can search for iceberg, and all of these can be used as backgrounds if you wanted to. Or it might be that we have a jungle, for example, and we've got some jungle backgrounds. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I am going to choose backgrounds, and then I'm just going to select a background. So let's go, I was going to go for disco, but I might go for something different. Let's go for the stage this time. So just click on the stage, click OK, and that has not added that because I've still got my sprite here. So what I can do is I can just press that X there and delete that, and that is going to add that stage. And it is weirdly off to the right, and I'm not quite sure why. There we go. Not quite sure what happened there. So if you are adding images that aren't in the background library, you do need to tick that box that says background, and that will just fill the whole page. Okay, so just be aware that that tick box is there. Now, the next thing that I always get my children to do if I'm teaching this, I get them to rename that sprite. So this sprite is actually our background. Okay, so I'm going to use this little arrow here. Again, I'm going to zoom in just so you can see this little arrow next to the word sprite 1, and that's going to give me some options. Like this is where I can clone it or I can rename, and I'm going to rename. Okay, and I'm going to rename that. I don't know what I'm doing on that keyboard. Background. Okay, and zoom out so I can hit OK. Now, the reason I do that is because I've had many heartbreaking lessons where the children have spent ages coding, and then they realise that they've coded the background. So learn from my mistakes. So that's what, and then you have to kind of coach them through, and have to keep them in like at lunchtime or after school, and like try and get them to, and generally it's the kids that have done really well. They've done this really nice coding. So it is quite heartbreaking. So that's how we can create a background. Okay, and then we can add an additional sprite here. So we've got our add button. So I'm not going to add in my penguin. I mean, I could have my dancing penguin if I wanted to, but I'm going to add in that letter. Okay, and I'm going to click on my Penguin Plus. And this time I could use this one. I'm going to go to my letters. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to find my capital N. I'm going to click OK, And there we go. That has added that onto my stage. And I can drag that so it has a kind of starting place. I can move that later if I want to. I can edit it, so I could add that into, a box, or I could start painting over it if I wanted to. I could even turn that into a full Word if I wanted to. But that's it. I am done now. So to create some code, I'm kind of going against what I said. So I'm going to rename that so I know which one it is, and I'm just going to rename it N. There we go. So I know that is my N that I am coding. And here we go. So I'm going to click on this little code logo here. Now I could drop this down to level 1 if I wanted to, and this would still work for this particular activity, but I'm going to stay with level 3 just to give you a sense of all of the options that we've got available. So the first thing I want when something happens, it's going to trigger something else happening. So that's where you're going to start using your events or your control, or creating your procedures if you wanted to. I've just seen a question. Yes, so many features are similar to Scratch 3. So if the children are aware of Scratch, Visual could be easy, right? Yes, absolutely. There's a huge amount of transferable skills and very similar functionality. What I will say is I have heard Scratch 3, there is a chat functionality in there that a lot of schools are steering clear of because there's no filtering in there. So not not to badmouth the competitors, but this is a very secure platform where children can't even talk to other children, they can only talk to their teachers within school. So just be aware. But yes, there are a lot of transferable skills. So we've got our control button. So this is where you've got your repeats or your forever do's or your wait a certain amount of time. And you can see we've got our star here. So that is when we can start to create procedures or change items and that kind of thing. You've also got your events. So that is more your games control activities. So when a space bar is pressed or when an up arrow is pressed. So that's great, if you've got characters using the up button. And I think it's just the up button. I don't think you can. There we go. I was thinking with some, I used to teach with Kodu. I don't even know if that's still a thing. And you could get one character programmed with the up, down, left, right, and one character programmed with the WASD. Sadly not. So I've added that when the up arrow is pressed. Now that is wrong. I don't want that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that down to my bin. You can see my little bin opens and I can just dump that in the bin. So anything that they add by mistake here, they can just bin it if they want to. So I don't want to have to trigger this particular letter or this character or this sprite. I just want it to continuously do something. So that's where I'm going to use my forever do. So I'm going to drag that block and I just want it to move up and down. So I'm going to go to my motion button. Now there's a very obvious one, which is move forward by a certain amount. I've just remembered I should have done something. I should check something, but I'll carry on. But because we're in level 3 and in level 1, that really is your only option. In level 3, you've also got glide. So this is actually a nice alternative. And sometimes I used to challenge my students. So with the move forward, I'll show you what it looks like. Move forward by 100. It's quite jumpy. There's not that kind of smooth movement. So I'm going to press play. So this is your debugging part of the curriculum now. So we've programmed, we've coded, we've added an algorithm. Now we're going to check that that works. So I'm going to press play. And yes, it kind of works, but there's a few things wrong with this. And that's what I was thinking. I hadn't checked something. So we can see it's moved, but it's moved this way and it's just kept moving. So it's moved off the screen. So this is what I love about coding, is getting the children to add things in and use their logical reasoning and their problem solving to try and figure out what has gone wrong with that. So there's 2 things wrong with that. First of all, the direction is wrong. And second of all, it doesn't move back to the original spot. Okay, so to change the direction, I'm going to click on the N button here. And just be aware, because this threw me a little bit when I first tried this activity, is the direction of this particular tool, this particular sprite. So this is set to right. So I want it to go up and down. So I need to set that direction. Okay, so I'm going to set it as up. And there we go. Okay, so just be aware that that button is there. And then I need it to move backwards. So we're going to click motion. I'm going to drag that block, add that in. So it's all sort of like a jigsaw puzzle. And I'm going to have that move backwards. So now, again, I'm going to practice or play that particular activity. And that has done that. So that is now our bouncing letter. Okay, so that is bouncing letters. But if I drag that out and pop that in the bin, I've also got the option to glide. Now, what's nice about the glide button is you can start using timings and also positioning. So we've got our X, Y axis. So I might have 2 seconds. So it's starting here. And we want to go up to about here. So what's that? Minus 105.50. So minus 105 and Y is 50. And then, of course, we want the same coming back down. Okay, so we're not going to make that mistake twice. So we're going to add that in, glide, and then we want it back in this position. So we're going to go minus 98, minus 178, and minus 178. And there we go. Okay, and we're going to press play, check that that works. And there we go. So you can see that that movement is much smoother. It's not as jolted. So it really depends on what look you're going for in your particular activity or your game, the functionality and that kind of thing. So there's lots of different options. Just to go through some of them, we've got things like say hello in speech bubbles. And you can have that timed. You can set the font and the size of your text. You can hide your sprite. You can switch costumes, so it hits a certain area and then it changes to a different looking sprite. You can set sizes. Pens, so you've got pen up, pen down, so it can draw certain shapes on the page. Text, so you've got print messages. Speak, so that is it's quite robotic, but you can have it so that it says, so this could say the letter N, for example. So speak, and you can choose whether it is male or female voice. We've got things like trim spaces from both sides, use uppercase letters, and then sensing. So these are things like touching the side of the page and bouncing off, or touching the mouse pointer, or moving towards the mouse pointer. Okay. And then once they're done, they click the save button, and that is going to save into their My Files area. Okay, so as a teacher, I click save. I'm going to just name that Endgame. And there we go. So that's going to save into my My Files. So if you are brand new to the site, this is your My Files area. So as a teacher, and as well as any user, you have your My Files. So the pupils content, if you need to look at it as a teacher, you can access that through the pupil files area. There is also a button off the launch pad. So there we go. So I can open that. So I can look in my class. I can look at Lottie, who has been doing some coding, and I can open up that coding and I can have a look in real time. So there we go. Lottie has done a spirograph. So that's how you would access your pupil content as well. Okay. Right, so that is visual. We're going to move on to logo now before we have a look at J2Webby in the library. So logo is a programming language in itself. It was designed for education, to teach programming to primary school children, to navigate a turtle around a page. So turtle, sprite, kind of used interchangeably as a word. So the turtle demonstrates the output for a given command. So you give it a variety of commands and it does something. And again, there's 3 levels of complexity with logo. And it links very nicely actually to Turtle and Bbots. So if you are using those, which I would highly recommend you are, if you're teaching computational thinking, it's got nice kind of skills progression. So I would always start with your Bbots, moving on to JIT-Turtle, using the simple and advanced modes in JIT-Turtle, and then moving on to logo level 1. So this is our level 1. We've got our 4 directional arrows. You've got your return home, clear canvas, pen down, pen up, and then your 5 different pen colours. Okay, so we could, for example, have a red pen, go forwards, right, forwards, right, forwards, right, forwards, right. And there we go. We've got our lovely square. Okay, so great for teaching children about having to move. It moves with each click of the button. Very similar to J2Turtle if you know J2Turtle. Okay, now we can clear our canvas. So we're going to clear this and that will clear what is on the screen. Then our level 2 has slightly more. So we've got our stage and our script, it's called. I was trying to think of the S word. So we've got our script. So that is all of our coding that we've just done in longhand. Okay, and then we're going to move on to logo shorthand in a second. So this is the big difference between level 1 and 2. We have this script. We can start typing into this. So I could add in left and then an amount. Okay, so I can press play and see how that has made that different. Okay, so I have adjusted the angle of that. So these numbers are angles, these numbers next to directions, so right, next to the forwards, those are lengths, next to the directions of right and left, those are angles. Okay, so again, cross-curricular links to your maths curriculum. And we can start playing with those. We can start adjusting. So I can play that and see if that has made a difference. And it has, because I haven't cleared my canvas. Okay, so I can add that at the top and I can actually say, I think this is right. Clear canvas. Would help if I could spell. I'm going to show myself up now. Completely broken it. Let's not do that. I think I need to put clear screen. There we go, clear screen. Okay. Then we've got level 3. So level 3 is here, and that is where we have our shorthand now for our logo. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, again, draw a square. So we're going to go forwards. Let's go left, forwards, left, forwards, left, forwards, left, and hit play and see we have created our square. So it may be that I want to create a bigger square this time. So I'm going to have forwards and I want that to go 100. So I can change my forwards. Now this is a very inefficient way of doing it, and I can guarantee this is the way that the children will start to do it. So we press play, there is our bigger square. So then we can start adjusting things like every other number. So this will create a different shape. Okay, and we can start adjusting our angles. So we might go, our angles are going to be 60 instead of 90, and I'm going to see how that adjusts the shape. And we hit play. And there we go. So it's gone completely off track. But if I adjusted these lengths, we've got half of a hexagon. Yeah, hexagon. Okay, so they can keep going. So that is a very inefficient way of doing it, but it is a good starting point. Once the children are familiar with this, so I'm just going to delete some of this. This is where you can start to add in your repeats. So this is very much like visual with your forever do's, or your repeat a number of times. So if you're used to using that in the block-based coding, you can start to introduce this here. And we've got this repeat function here. So if I click that, that has repeat for and some square brackets. Now what's important is whatever you want to repeat needs to go in the square brackets. Okay, so we can cut this. So I'm going to just right click, cut and paste. And that now will repeat 4 times. So if I press play, okay, now the reason it's repeated 4 times, okay, so that's completely changed what we did earlier, made it much more efficient. It's only given us 4 sides, so I need to change something. And the thing that I need to change is this repeat function. So that would work for a square, but for a hexagon, we need it to repeat 6 times. There we go. So that would be another activity that I would do with the children. Then I would start getting them to think about regular polygons. So how we can create these regular shapes. So a hexagon is 6 sides, and this angle inside here is 60 degrees. So that is a 60 degrees angle, and it has to travel around 6 times. My son's just come in. So we've got our angle 60 and repeat 6. So for an octagon, that would be a 45-degree angle, and it will repeated 8 times. So let's hit play, make sure that it's right. There we go. So a triangle would be, I should know that, 90, 75, 85? I'm not quite sure. A square is 90, and an octagon is a square is obviously repeat 4, angle 90. Let's go for a pentagon. I can do that one. Repeat 5, and this angle should be 60. So if I hit play, that should be 75. Almost 70. Almost. Anyway, we'll gloss over that. So that is your activity for your logo. You can start introducing things like procedures, so you can create procedures. You've got your turtle options here. So some of these are really quite nice. You've got things like set X, Y, or set X, set Y, hide turtle and show turtle. So that could be that it hides the turtle completely, so it looks like it's like a magic drawing. So you could have you know, the pen just starting to draw and create a word. You've got set heading, reset. You've also got in the maths option, you've got things like, is it maths? No, it's turtle. Arc length. So that is when you can build in things like curves. So that's quite nice as well. Okay, just conscious of time. And again, you can save that into your My Files. The children can save that into their My Files, and there's lots of different things that you can do with this. Now, there are also some backgrounds built into this. So if I just click this button here, there's various backgrounds they can choose from. So these are really nice because they are preset in terms of length, and they are nice to challenge the students with. Now, I know if there are any Northern Irish teachers out there, this fits in nicely with the Charlotte's Web SEER task. And that is the spider background. And some of these angles, I'm just going to clear that so we can see. Some of these angles, you can see they have to figure out how to rotate and kind of get around all of the flies. So I tend to do it with, you know, they find all the blue flies or they find all the black flies and they have to avoid the other colour. Okay. There's also some different kind of round mazes and around the town. And these are ones where they have to draw around the shape. So they have to kind of follow this pen up, pen down. And that's very challenging, that one. Okay, so those are there for you to have a go at, or for the children to have a go at. Right, lastly, we're going to have a look at peer assessment and review using J2Webby. So I used to teach this as like a half-term project. So they would explore activities. So this would be actually a nice way for them to start that project. If you were to post, for example, one of the examples, and then they could reply in the comments about what they think about that particular activity. Then I would get them to explore how to create games, then create their own game. And then this was the last bit. We would post it somewhere and they'll be able to each comment on each other's game. Okay, so J2Webby, it utilizes peer review, and it can be an important part of the coding process. So playing each other's game can add that fun element to the review process. Each class in your school has their own blog in J2Webby. So this is created when a pupil pushes content to the blog. So it might look like your class doesn't have a blog. It's just because a pupil needs to push content. And all content posts and comments have to be moderated by a teacher before it is visible. So I should have put all pupil content. Okay. So this is done through the moderate area. So I have had a child push their coding, and they've done that by clicking on the publish button, and they've selected the blog and just clicked publish to J2Webby. So this features in all of our tools, in JIT, J2 Create, J2 Data, J2 Code. So the children can push any of their content up to Webby. So one of my children in my class has already done that this afternoon. So you can see here my moderate button. I've got some numbers on it. So I'm going to click on that, and I've got class 1. That's the one that we're going to have a look at. And here we've got Lottie has been doing some coding, so she's got her spirograph and she's got her Egyptian maze. So let's have a look. So I can hover over that and I can preview and I can see what it looks like. So there's her coding. I can hit play. I can use my arrows, and that is going to navigate around the maze. So it will have the full functionality. Unfortunately, I do need to kind of full screen it. So I can full screen it, and then I can play that game live. Okay. As a teacher, if I am happy with that, you know, there's no GDPR infringements, there's no issues, there's no spelling mistakes, I have the option to publish that. I can, of course, bin that if I want to. That bins that submission, but I am going to publish that for argument's sake. So there we go. And that is going to appear in J2Webby, which is here. Okay. And under the blogs page, so this is our home page here, under our blogs, you can see I've got my different classes. You can notice in that list that class 3 and class 6 are missing. That's because they haven't had a pupil push content to the blog site. Okay, so if I go to class 1, there is that Egyptian maze. We can go to view post, and that is a playable game. We've also got the comment option underneath. So it could be that the children each post their game, they can have a go at each other's game, and then they can leave that comment underneath about maybe 2 stars and a wish. What did you do really well? What do you think could work a bit better? Are there any improvements? So the really nice part of that peer review process. And all of those comments do have to be authorized as well. So you can see here I've got Lottie has some comments that she's made, and I can authorize those as well. Okay, so I can approve, and these are all approved already, so I can unapprove anything at any point. Right, so that is how you can access J2Webby. Just to draw your attention to the library resources, we do have the Egyptian mazes in there. We've got various activities like the Flat Stanley activity. So that is built around that kind of maze that we were looking at earlier, but that's been imported into J2 Visual. And then Draw a Snowflake. So that has a teacher file, so you can see the coding and the children challenge themselves. And then the Hive Hackers activity. So if you, in library, which is here, if you search for Hive Hackers, you can see here there's lots. Now they aren't in order, they are in like order, so people can like things as they sort of have a go, but they are listed. So activity 1 obviously is the first starting point, and then you'll find activity 2 and activity 3. So there's activities and there's also challenges as well. So one of the nice challenges, if I can find, I think it's on page 2. Challenge, you can protect the castle. There was a space comment, it wasn't that one. Let me see if I can find it. I can't find it now. It's this one, build an alien game. So let's see if I've hyperlinked it. Oh, I have. There we go. So this is quite a simple one. But they can have a go. Here we go. So this is pre-programmed. I hit play and it will follow my mouse pointer. So they just have to move their mouse and collect all of the stars. So very simple. And then we can have a look at the code. There we go. Forever do, switch costume. And what happens when it hits a star? It just disappears. There we go. Okay. Right. Again, conscious of time. I am wrapping up now. So these are our social media handles. If you want to follow us on Facebook or X, formerly known as Twitter, those are our handles. This is our email address, edteam@j2e.com, so that comes through to myself, Charlie and Mary. In terms of next steps, we do have a visual live lesson coming up. So if you haven't heard about these live lessons, they're very popular now. We're getting between 3,000 and 4,000 students per lesson attending. So this one is coming up on 7th of March between 11 and 11:45. So it will be geared around J2Code Visual, and we're going to be doing some jungle programming. So programming some creatures to come into the jungle. You can book for that live lesson and also additional training sessions via the teachers area. Okay, so this is brand new. It only arrived, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So teachers area, you've got your What's On, which is our training. You bookable 15-minute appointments. If you want a one-on-one with me, you're more than welcome. You can book that. And this is our recorded content. So this session and others can be found here via our YouTube channel. And there's also lots of other little bits, so tip of the week and getting started and that kind of thing. But you can book on any of our training sessions there. Just to let you know, for COBIS schools, you will need to have, if you are participating in the competition, you will need to have your students onboarded. So if you are having any issues or you have any questions relating to your account or onboarding, you can email office@j2e.com. And any other questions you can direct at Charlie. So that is charlie@j2e.com. So those are the two email addresses that you may need. So I'm going to open up the chat now to any questions that you might have. So please feel free to type them into the chat. If not, again, thank you ever so much for giving up your free time. I know how time poor you are as teachers, and that these sort of training slots are very sought after. So thank you ever so much for choosing us. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I hope to see you for another session soon. So I will hang around. But if you don't have any questions, please feel free to head off. I'm going to keep an eye